Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzales, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
Welcome back to the Babies in Business Podcast. Avram and Rachel here.
Hello.
We're recording in our garage studio, keeping quiet while the baby goes. We've definitely been having a hard time batching our episodes and stuff lately. The baby's been crying a lot, and Rachel usually has to wear him in order to settle him. So it's been hard to get some episodes out. We're doing our best here. But today we want to talk about what is effective motivation. We have some great examples today that we're going to talk about of things that are great examples of motivation versus not, particularly in line with incentives. So while we're taking a business approach to looking at how incentivization can work or not work, we are going to give you some great examples of things that are not business related that will make crystal clear why certain things work and others don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's start off with a very funny story. I think the basis of what we're going to explore today is if there's any kind of incentivization, whether in business or in your household, how you motivate people, you have to really think through how you incentivize things. Because if there's one thing that people are very good at breaking, it's a compensation plan. It's the rules of the game that you have set up for folks. So when I was younger in the Boy Scouts, every single year we would sell Christmas wreaths to raise money for our troop, to go on trips and fund different things, new equipment and stuff like that. Well, we were also paid a small commission based off of the number of units sold. So when you sold less units, you made less money. But if you sold over 50, you then made your way into a new bracket of compensation. So my goal was always sell 50 units plus as quickly as possible, and then every unit after that is worth a lot more money. So I noticed something really interesting. I would get the same number of points for selling an $18 item, the spray, the little swag that you put maybe in between your garage doors under the lights out front, versus the $26 or $28 Christmas wreath. So what I would frequently do is if somebody wanted to buy 2 Christmas wreaths, I would say, well, have you considered maybe a Christmas wreath in 2 sprays to put under the lights in front of your house? It's about the same amount of money, just a couple dollars more. People would be like, that's a great idea. So I would up the number of units that I could sell and what I would get commission on, but what the troop actually earned was less than if they had just sold a bunch of Christmas wreaths. So I found a way to sort of break the compensation plan by selling a ton of swags and getting compensated for each of those units versus some of the higher dollar amount things. I just found it easier to push. So
I could totally see young Avram doing that.
Right. So, 11, 12 years old, already trying to break compensation plans and figuring out, well, this is the easier way to do that and make the money. And I think that this just rings true in basically every area of life. So the incentive was set up to make us excited to sell more, but at the end of the day, the troop wasn't getting as much as they could have if they'd incentivized it a little bit differently and thought it through.
Yeah, sure.
So I think it's important to talk about, before we get into the different examples that we have, certain things that motivate people. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it ranges. It's, we have a list here, and we don't really have to talk about it because it's really self-explanatory. Money. If you're doing something, you're an employee, or you're thinking money, you work for money, but it could be prestige, it could be recognition, it could be experiences, and it can also be growth around their job or the ability to earn more money, like incentives, in addition to their base pay, that kind of thing, So there's a couple of different things that people look for when they look for different things to do, what motivates them.
Well, there are internal factors and external factors.
Absolutely.
Money is a great example of an external factor
Yep.
that motivates some people a lot, other people very little, versus looking at things like your personal growth, your skill sets. Like, people feel better about themselves when they're progressing towards something.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, so we have some fun examples here of different ways that we can show you how incentivization works well or doesn't work so well. Rachel has some funny stories too, actually, of how it worked well and how it didn't work well. Or maybe it's just looking at hourly versus piecemeal incentivization. So what's a fun fact about you most people don't know?
Yeah, so I worked as a forklift operator in Three Forks, Montana for 5 years at a pallet shipping plant. We made pallets that you ship things on out of wood. So there were really good examples of different motivations and how it actually backfired for the business. And I saw this as the forklift operator because I was the one bringing all of the supplies to these different people. So the two examples that I'll give is the one person was on a big gantry chainsaw. So you put units of wood on this big platform, and then you advance it to a blade that goes down horizontally. So it's held on both sides, and then it goes down, and it's cutting this basically big loaf of wood, okay? And this person really, really did a good job of knowing his numbers, and he actually broke the system enough that the people at the plant, the owners, managers, were like, we're gonna have to change this. This doesn't work for us. He pushed back, and he did get to keep his piecemeal, but it wasn't working for them because they were paying him so much more, like a lot more than they ever wanted to pay anybody in the plant. So he was motivated to work very quickly, and he was very, very irritated with me if I ever delayed in unloading the other end. So when he's done cutting everything and he can't advance the next unit and I hadn't taken everything off, he'd get very upset with me. Okay, so that was the motivation and the attitude of that person with piecemeal. He knew that what he did is how he got paid. As quickly as he could, he'd get paid more. Then there was this couple, man and wife, older, probably in their, I want to say maybe late 60s, really. And Rick and Mary are their names. They came in and they were on hourly. They were sorting all the materials that were thrown away by the nailers, the people making the pallets. And they just moseyed along. If I forgot to bring them a bin for 5 minutes, oh, they were happy town. They were just taking a break over by their saws. They were just chatting it up. And then when I finally brought them something, they just mosey along and pick up the first board and, just as slow as slugs. And they were super happy to not have stuff brought to them or taken away when they finished a unit. So I thought that was really interesting to see the real difference in how people acted based on their incentivization for money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and interesting how the guy that was doing piecemeal he probably rubbed more than just you the wrong way in hurrying you around and demanding that.
He was a bully.
Yeah, bringing you the materials and stuff, bringing the materials. So that affected the whole workplace.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. I think that is a good example. We know somebody else that we see at the gym from time to time, and I say time to time because they're just not consistent.
Yeah.
Right, and so I think this is another thing where I see so clearly in this person from conversations that we've had that they're motivated to be there by external forces. So it's about hopefully attracting the right mate.
Right, there was a girl that had said something like, why haven't you achieved this or that or something? Mm-hmm. And he felt bad about it. So he's like, gotta get working on that.
Gotta get working on that. There's friends that are encouraging them, hey, you should come to the gym with us and work out. Right, so whenever that motivation is there, they're there.
Right, and when the friend isn't there out of town on work or whatever, we don't see that person, that friend.
Because there's no internal motivation that's spurring them on to go do that. It's not for themselves, it's for, the way that other people see them.
Right.
It's because there's some accountability from friends, and when that's not there, there is none. And then
and also when he's there, sometimes I'll see him in a hoodie the entire workout. And what that tells me is either he is sweating his butt off underneath that sweatshirt, which I don't think is the case, or he's just really unmotivated to be there. And he feels like such a, for lack of better words, a loser. in a
Sure.
lot of ways.
Sure.
And it shows on the outside.
Yeah. And the people that are there every day, that are making it happen, yeah, some people are externally motivated, but a lot of the folks there have found their own internal motivation and reason to be there, and that's why they continue to show up day in, day out.
Right.
That's our second example. Third example actually comes from one of our clients, our good friend Paul at Good Buddy Dog Training. When we first started working with Paul years ago, we asked, why are you so gung-ho about positive reinforcement dog training versus what they call balance training, which might use, choke collars, shocking, other things like that. They call it balance training,
Which
right?
is, yeah.
Which is wild, right? And one of the reasons that he said is, look, what we do might take a little bit more time using positive reinforcement, but what it does is it creates a bond between you and your animal.
Yeah.
And when you have that bond, you have that trust. And when you have all those things together, the dog has a sense of accomplishment and internal motivation to continue doing the commands and following the training.
Yeah, and they want to follow you because they love you and
Right.
because they want to please you, or, that kind of thing, that they see, oh, wow, this makes my experience better.
Yeah. Versus balance training using fear and using punishment might short-term get, the dog might show some change or transformation, but you don't know about how that could maybe backfire later in different behaviors. And then also when the fear and the punishment isn't there, how would the dog
Really be able to decipher between the things to do, probably.
Yeah, right. So just found that to be an interesting example in an unrelated field about what we're talking about and how to really motivate. So in this case, animals, right? But I think we still see the same thing to be true in other places.
Yeah, well, and there's this other, B&I, we're a part of this networking group that we're there promoting our business, and so is everybody else in that room. But there are times then that recognition is given to somebody for whether it is bringing in referrals into the group or it's for having those one-on-one meetings with each other. Whatever those things are, those can be some of those motivations that we want to see for us to help keep us going. We love recognition. Recognition feels pretty good because entrepreneurs don't get that often.
No.
It's not like we have a boss that's saying, hey, great job. We're the boss. And
Yeah.
sometimes we feel like we're not quite up to par for what
Yeah.
we want to get done.
One of the things I learned from the leadership training as I took my role for president several years back at BNI was the method for how you move your chapter in the desired direction is all about positive reinforcement and recognition. So basically you highlight and you spotlight and you really cheer on the activities that you want to see continued and done more of. And you actually ignore the negative things that you don't want to continue. Like you almost act like they don't exist. And that was maybe the first time I'd been exposed to a perspective like that. And seeing it play out both in that room and then even in our family seems to be true. Which leads us to our fifth and final example. And really, I think a lot of the inspiration around this particular episode, Rachel.
Yeah, here we are. We have a 2-year and 2-month-old. Lincoln is coming up to learning how to go to the bathroom by himself. He's going to be potty learning, and it's a big process. But there's so many different methods out there, and people swear by this and people swear by that, and you're going to get so much advice when you go through this one thing in a toddler's life, this milestone. And for us, people have told us treats and this and that, all these rewards and incentives. But really, if you get on the treats or rewards treadmill, it really is a treadmill or a mountain. You're going to climb it, and it's got to be bigger and better and more, and they get bigger and more. So not having rewards as far as like external motivation, but having internal motivation for the kid to really understand what is happening. And instead of, will I get an M&M when I go potty, to, oh, I feel the need to go potty, I'm going to go potty. And I'm going to feel really proud about that. So that's just a different kind of motivation, but really a longer lasting one. Kind of like with, I know it's really bad to compare kids to dogs, but kind of like when you're training a dog, that they want to have positive things kind of thrown at them or they're learning in positive ways and it lasts longer. And with kids, you know, if you're constantly rewarding them and they don't get a reward for something, what is the motivation to do that thing? And then you get on that treadmill of constantly giving rewards. So we're going into that for Lincoln.
Yeah, I was going through the training before we get started here in the next few days, next week or so, and I thought it was interesting, the ladies that are doing it, they were saying, you know, as an example, an extreme example,
Yeah.
they're like, don't give your kids a tablet or a phone when they're on the potty as a reward for sitting.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is the kid's going to be jumping up and running over there to potty at a certain point because they just want to be on the iPad.
Yes.
And then what happens when they don't have the iPad?
Right.
Well, that's going to be an interesting thing because there's no more reward.
Right.
Versus like what you shared, Rachel, the intrinsic reward is the pride that you have from not peeing and pooping on yourself anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that in life there are a lot of natural consequences that can be very motivating.
Yeah, absolutely. And for this little kid, you know, they don't really know these things. They can't connect the feeling of needing to pee or poop to going and putting that in the potty. So this is what we're trying to teach them. And they're so smart. They can understand, and they're going to be putting the pieces together. So helping them see that personal intrinsic motivation is really awesome.
I think as we wrap this conversation, the thing that I want to point out is everything here in the examples that you've seen are, okay, we put this thing, this incentive in place. So then what are the consequences of that?
Sure.
You gave a great example with the pallet plant where the owners didn't really think through, wow, what happens if somebody does this much?
Yeah.
You know, and then they found themselves having to backtrack, and that was going to create a lot of chaos.
Right.
So I think there's a lot that you have to do in thinking through. If I do this, what will occur? It's very easy, I think, to take the shortcut, what we think is the right thing, just to get a result right now, and we don't really think through, well, if I keep doing that, is it going to continue getting the result? Is it going to morph and change? Is this going to really work long term? What if I'm not here to motivate next time?
Absolutely. Or if somebody motivates a different way or whatever that is, I thought of, you know, if we give, like breaking these motivation or these things these incentives that we're giving people, think about a toddler. If you say, what would you like for breakfast? And they say, cookies. Well, you better give them cookies because you gave them the choice. So they broke your incentive plan right there. You know, you're giving them a choice. You got to give it within bounds. So understanding where those limits are, should they be broken, is a good thing to know.
Mm-hmm. And like if you're running a sales team, you might be thinking that money is everything, but it could be an experience or something special or unique that you're giving.
Sure, or it could be like a gym membership, or it could be, you know, whatever those things might be.
There's a lot of different ways to incentivize people. You have to really think through what's going to work for you long term and play that out. And I think it always helps to ask somebody that you know, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Have you done that before?
Right.
Maybe getting some feedback before making a big change.
Right. I know some people, they do some silly stuff with like motivation stuff. Like, if you get more deals than I do, I'm going to shave my head. And I've seen that come about, and the boss shaves his head as opposed to the other person.
I'll give you another example because I can't leave it alone. You see people that run contests for their business, and they'll do something like, okay, for every entry, or you know, there's going to be a raffle for, you saw it a lot like 10 years ago, an iPad. So you're running like a heating and cooling company, and everybody that signs up is entered to win a free iPad. And you're thinking, I'm going to turn around and market to these people a new air conditioning system. Well, it's like, no, they signed up because they want the iPad. They have no desire for a new AC system.
Sure.
Wrong incentive for the result that you're trying to get.
Sure, because they're going to mark you spam as fast as you can email them anything.
You're not going to want to hear from you later.
Nope.
All right, so the question for you, Mr. or Mrs. Listener, we're going to post this on social media. I'd love to hear you join the conversation. Have you ever created an incentive that backfired for your kids? Tell us. We'd love to hear it. What was something that you put in place and then you realized, oops, maybe I shouldn't have gone that direction? It can be funny, it can be serious. We'd love to hear from you. Just find us online at Babies and Biz Pod, Facebook, Instagram. YouTube, those different places. Would love to connect with you there. You can always email us at hello@babiesandbiz.com. With that, we appreciate you for listening. If you haven't yet, give us that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Other people use those ratings to decide on whether they're going to listen to the new one or not. We appreciate you for being here. We'll catch you
on the flip side. Bye for now.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.